Welcome. I'm Eric Gao, and here's what happened this week. Now, as China continues to send warplanes around Taiwan, the Air Force here is practicing to intercept those jets, even late at night. John Van Trieste reports.
Until now, midnight takeoffs like this one have not been part of the usual schedule at Taiwan's Air Force bases. But 3 bases, in Hualien, Tainan, and Hsinchu, are set to start regular nighttime drills, practicing so that Taiwan can scramble its jets at any time, in any weather. China regularly sends warplanes into Taiwan's air defense zone. They're reminders of China's claims to Taiwan and its vow to take Taiwan by force if necessary. On average, over 1,000 Chinese warplanes have made these incursions in recent years, forcing Taiwan to send its own planes up to chase them off. People living near Taiwan's Air Force bases have grown used to hearing fighter jets scrambling. But what they aren't used to is hearing takeoffs late at night. Even nighttime flights usually end before 10. People living near one of the bases set to do midnight flights, in Hualien in eastern Taiwan, say it will be an adjustment. But it won't be all night every night. The drills will only happen once or twice a month and only last from 11 to 1. The number of bases holding the drills will eventually grow. While it's a small step, military analysts say it's a necessary one, as Chinese warplanes can come at any hour. So the nighttime skies over Taiwan are set to become much more active, with pilots and ground crews both preparing to respond as soon as the alert comes in. Justin Wu and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Meanwhile, a military base in southern Taiwan has accepted its first batch of one-year conscripts. Bryn Thomas looks at how they're being trained to become Marines.
Ranking up, Taiwan's Marine Corps is processing its first batch of 155 recruits since the country reinstated one-year conscription. These young men will undergo 8 weeks of basic training before becoming Marines. Taiwan extended mandatory military service back in 2022 from 4 months to 1 year. It's part of an effort to strengthen the country's defenses amid growing aggression from China, which continually threatens to invade Taiwan. That's why Taiwan's Marine Corps wants to make sure its conscripts get the training they need.
期许役男能够顺利完成训练及考核。为了提供训员们有更完善的照顾，将以同理心为出发点，体恤以及关怀各位训员们的生活起居。
Taiwan's military says it plans to use conscripts in support roles, backing up and supplying frontline professional soldiers. But with increasing tensions in the Taiwan Strait, ensuring they're well-trained is an absolute necessity. Eason Chen and Bryn Thomas for TaiwanPlus.
It's been just over 5 months since the war between Israel and Hamas broke out, and people in Taipei organized a march in solidarity with Palestinians to the de facto U.S. embassy here. Tiffany Wong was there.
Arabs flames will never die!
Arabs flames will never die!
AIT is genocide!
AIT is genocide!
Today, dozens of people are gathered here in front of the de facto American embassy in Taiwan to pay their respects to Aaron Bushnell, an active duty member of the U.S. Air Force who self-immolated in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. just over a week ago. He committed the act of protest against U.S. support of Israel in its war against Hamas, which has left over 30,000 Palestinians in the Gaza Strip dead. The U.S. is one of Israel's biggest allies and has sent billions of U.S. dollars in aid since the war began. Those here say that makes the U.S. complicit in genocide, as 2 million Palestinians have been squeezed into the southern Gaza Strip, with many facing starvation.
For the U.S. government, they have been long enablers, and actually not even just enablers, they're active actors in funding genocides.
The U.S. has the power to end this, but it's choosing not to for its own economic and political gain against the wishes of its own people. This charade that the U.S. is some beacon of freedom and democracy, like, it's already fully crumbled.
Only a single representative of the group was allowed to approach the de facto embassy. and was turned away from placing flowers and a poster. It's been 5 months since war between Israel and Hamas broke out, and Palestinian civilians in the Gaza Strip are on the brink of starvation. Humanitarian aid into Gaza is controlled by Israel, and last week 100 Palestinians were killed while waiting for food aid. Israel denies its forces were involved. Earlier this week, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris called on Hamas to agree to a ceasefire, the top U.S. official to do so. But U.S. President Joe Biden has staunchly reiterated his support for Israel. Now it's clear from the crowds here that people around the world will be watching America's next move. Devin Tai and Tiffany Wong in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's main opposition Kuomintang is taking stock after losing the presidential elections earlier this year. The party's chair has proposed a reorganization to help sway the country's younger voters. Joyce Zeng reports.
Fighting to stay relevant, Taiwan's opposition party, the Kuomintang, or KMT, is changing things up. A big move for the century-old party, whose ties to China have both helped and hurt their political influence over the years. Party chairman Eric Chu has targeted the hardline Huangfu-Xing faction for reform. It's dominated by veterans who largely back unification with China, a direction rejected by most people in Taiwan. Chu's proposal rolls the faction into a broader Veterans Service Committee.
名称还是保留，这些干部扩大服务也都留用，绝对不是消灭黄复兴，而是让我们整个国民党的组织更强大、更经济、更团结。
Though the Huangfu-Xing's views on cross-strait relations clash with public opinion, the faction makes up about a quarter of the KMT, and some of its members are already angry with Chu's plans.
如果跟陈如主席所讲的都没有变动，保留黄复兴，人也留，什么都留，那你定他干什么？搬石头砸自己脚，看看痛不痛吗？这不是在骗吗？
Besides changes to its veteran base, the party is also looking for new blood, announcing plans to open a KMT Studio, a digital platform aimed at attracting younger supporters. Facing a strong ruling party and a third force party that's proving increasingly popular among the country's youth, the KMT has a tough road ahead if it wants to remain relevant. Patrick Chen and Joyce Tsin for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's labor minister has apologized for remarks about Indian migrant workers that some people feel were racist. Jonathan Trieste has this report.
Labor Minister Xu Ming-chun appears at Taiwan's legislature. Lawmakers want an explanation. In a recent interview, Xu said Taiwan's plan to bring in Indian migrant workers will be limited to those from northeastern India. Her reasoning sparked accusations of racism.
不管在肤色、饮食习惯，都跟我们比较相近。然后不管在这个制造、营造或农业方面，都是他们擅长的强项。
Taiwan's foreign ministry has apologized for what it called Xu's inappropriate language and said that Taiwan will welcome Indian workers of any background as long as they meet job requirements. But that hasn't quelled anger, including among lawmakers. Huang Ren, an indigenous Taiwanese lawmaker who represents an indigenous constituency, had this to say.
肤色不同，就是潜在你潜在的内心里面就已有歧视的。
But the labor minister says there was no racist intent behind what she said.
我真的没有任何歧视的意思。其实我是肯定印度移工他们的素质跟工作能力的表现，或许发言不够精准，有造成外界的误解，这个部分我会来检讨。那我昨天也对这样的一个造成一个纷扰误解，我也表达歉意。
Whatever her intentions, advocates for migrant workers in Taiwan say her choice of words reflects racist attitudes that do exist in Taiwan society, and that racism is a problem migrant workers in Taiwan do face.
有部分台湾民众可能会去认同这件事情，因为就说刚刚有说到，就是有些观念上的歧视啊，或观念上的一些文化差异、肤色差异、语言差异，还是会让台湾人造成一些刻板印象。
It's unclear how the labor minister's apology will go down in India, a country the government has worked to draw closer to as it works to boost relations with Taiwan's southern neighbors. But it puts plans to open up a new source of imported labor on an awkward footing before they are even finalized. Luffy Li and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
A travel ban on Taiwanese tour groups visiting China is set to come back into effect in June, cutting off a major source of income for tour operators on both sides of the strait. Reese Ayers looks at how comments from Taiwan's transportation ministry may have added insult to injury.
A tit-for-tat over tourism. The Taiwan Tourism Bureau's COVID-era ban on tour groups visiting China is set to come back into effect in June, having just been lifted on March 1st. Officials cite national security risks as the reason for reinstating the ban and say that Beijing still refuses to allow tour groups to Taiwan. It's a spat that's leaving many tour providers without a major source of income.
台商也可以过去，自由行也可以过去，宗教交流也可以，就是我旅行社不能社团，我旅行社是踩到你观光署什么东西？你观光署是旅行社的大家长，你要带头，而不是说啊你们不行。
In the 3-month window in which groups from Taiwan can visit China, around 100,000 people are scheduled to travel, demonstrating the massive business potential for tour operators. The hit to the industry has been made worse by recent comments from Taiwan's transport minister, who suggests tour operators take a more active role in mending cross-strait relations.
说你们带团到大陆在那玩的时候，也让对方了解到，他们应该是让观光客赶快过来。我想我会请他们要做这个努力。
Taiwan's Travel Agency Association hit back at Wang's comments, saying they shouldn't be roped into Taiwan and China's political posturing.
你现在禁止我们旅游业组团赴大陆，又希望我们旅游业去跟大陆好好聊。我觉得这个问题是我不是官方，我没有受授权，所以我不便去跟大陆讲到有关于政治上面的问题。
Some in the industry think a gesture of goodwill from Taiwan could be an effective way to ease tensions across the strait and repair damage done to tourism industries on both sides.
所以以前来看的话，当然都是我们台湾这边先过去，然后一切水到渠成以后，两岸关系觉得感觉不错了以后，然后自然而然它就开放了。我觉得这是要营造一个氛围。
It's not just outbound tourism that's taking a hit. Transport Minister Wang Guotai announced a 12 million visitor target for Taiwan at the beginning of the year. A goal people in the industry say will be difficult to achieve without tourists from China.
观光署是计划1200万人嘛，如果大陆在4年前200万，扣掉200万，要破1000万是不容易的。
Tour operators in Taiwan have threatened to strike if the government doesn't roll back the ban. But until the cross-strait tourism standoff breaks, industries on both sides will need to make do without a major source of revenue. Chris Ma and Rises for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's health ministry says obesity is a growing issue in Taiwan. Our reporter Harrell Hughes looks at what authorities say are the biggest factors behind this trend.
A hearty pat on the belly. But doctors say that gut is one of the leading causes of death in Taiwan. According to Taiwan's health ministry, of the top 10 causes of death, 8 are related to being overweight. And much of what's causing concern is what's being stored around people's beltline.
隐性的肥胖可能他是 BMI 正常，可是他的腰肚子比较大，他的腹内脂肪就是我们的内脏脂肪比较高，这一群人也是需要去做防治的。
1 out of every 3 teenagers in Taiwan is overweight or obese, and children spend too much time indoors. Health experts say sedentary lifestyles are to blame, and healthy habits in childhood could go a long way in preventing health issues later in life.
这个跟它的荷尔蒙的代谢是相关的，那我们肥胖的产生的一些相关的荷尔蒙，可能会使得性早熟比较容易产生。
But it's not just Taiwan's youth. An estimated 50% of adults are overweight or obese. And health experts say it's the same issue. Not enough movement in their daily lives.
怎么让员工在职场中透过更多的科技智慧的导入，以及居家环境的设置，让他们的这个运动成为一个普遍的氛围。
Changing up lifestyles for all generations could be the key to ensure Taiwan's people can live healthier and longer lives. Andy Shui and Harrell Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for joining us for Here's What Happened. Now check out this art exhibition in London featuring Lego versions of some of the world's most famous masterpieces. I'm Eric Gao. Take care and enjoy the rest of your weekend.